Right. And I think now is as good a time as any. Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you very, very much for joining us on this cold, dark, wintry, wet evening. We're going to bring some sunshine into your life because it is Polar Bear Week. So we are going to be going into the heart and the realm of polar bears on our Discover Svalbard evening tonight, where we're going to be concentrating on small ship experiences. You're not here to talk to me, you're here to talk to my lovely colleague Bret, and he will be taking you through, in his eyes, one of his most favourite places on the planet. There will be questions at the end of the session in around about 45 minutes time. But if you do think of anything during the presentation, please do use your chat and the Q&A buttons if you like. But Bret, right, he and I both have the great fortune of leading small ship experiences out to Svalbard in May and June every year. So Bret, over to you, my lovely. Enjoy.
Thanks, Helen. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight. Hopefully, I will be able to whisk you off to the Arctic and show you an amazing wilderness that both Helen and myself, obviously, are very, very passionate about. To start with, I'm going to introduce the vessels we use, just to give you a little bit of an idea as to sort of what to expect, I suppose. So, the thing I want to do first of all, though, before I sort of speak about those vessels, is just give you an idea of where Svalbard is. It's a question we get asked a lot, and I think a lot of people find it a little bit confusing. So this picture here, this map, is a map of the north of Canada, including Baffin Island and places like that, Greenland, obviously, Iceland, and Svalbard. And in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen is the northwestern and northern coast of Norway. So it gives you an idea of how far north it is. It's a very remote archipelago, kind of in landmass terms, a little bit smaller than Iceland if you add up all the islands, but it's a very isolated part of the world. It's officially part of Norway, but it is an autonomous region. So it has its own legislations, and it's not part of Schengen, to give you an idea. So if you need to get into Svalbard, you quite often have to go through customs, and if you leave Norway, you will actually sometimes have to go through customs in Oslo, but otherwise it can be through Tromsø, just to give you an idea. And we fly typically with Scandinavian Airlines, to give you an idea as well. So it's a fantastic place. The archipelago itself is made up of a few main islands and then quite a few different ones. So we have the main island itself, which is Spitsbergen, which is another name you'll probably hear. And the capital of the whole archipelago is the town of Longyearbyen. It's an old mining town, and it's the hub really for everything that happens on these islands. The other large island is Nordastandet up on the northeast side. That's actually home to an ice cap. And then you've also got the islands of Balansøya and Edgøya as well. So they're the main four islands, but there are other ones scattered around as you can see. But it's a fascinating place, and there's lots to see all over, not just in certain areas. So I think some people think the further north you go, the most likely you are to see Arctic wildlife. Sometimes you can have the very best wildlife sightings right by Longyearbyen. This year I had some incredible sightings within touching distance of Longyearbyen. So you never quite know where the wildlife is, and that's what makes a small ship experience particularly rewarding. So the ships themselves. So we've got two that we charter. The Skavin, which is this beautiful ship here, and this is actually the trip that Helen uses for her voyages. So we go in end of May, beginning of June typically, and it's a very, very beautiful ship, perfectly suited for small ship expeditions, basically. So it takes 12 packs in total. So we take 11 with Helen as your leader, and it's a very modern ship inside. So it's very, very comfortable, and it gives you the option, for example, of having double beds and twin rooms without having bunks. So I've got some pictures here so you can see the accommodation. It's been refurbished recently. It looks fantastic inside, very comfortable with great facilities on board. If you have any questions, by the way, about the ships, please do ask at the end, as well as the wildlife. And Helen and I, between us, should be able to answer any questions. So Skavin is a fantastic vessel with good facilities, obviously en suite, great food as well, and fantastic expedition crew and expedition leaders, which are obviously what makes these trips such a success, and the skipper too. The ship I use is the MS Stockholm. Again, it takes 12 passengers. It's a very traditional ship. It's actually built, I think, in 1953. It's a part of maritime history and it's protected under Swedish law. It is a Swedish registered ice strengthened ship. And it's a little bit more characterful, but it is beautiful. It's incredibly strong and it is ideal for this. What I should also say is that both ships have two zodiacs, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about that shortly. So Stockholm itself has an amazing policy, as I think Skaveen does as well. Open bridge, open bow. You can go where you like, and it just provides such amazing flexibility. When I get on board MS Stockholm each year, the first thing I do after everyone's settled into their cabins is I go up on the bridge with the captain and the expedition leader, and we sit down and we make a plan. The plan is up to me and the expedition leader and the captain together. As a trio, we work out what we want to do, where we want to go, look at weather charts, and we make a plan accordingly. And the flexibility that we have as a small ship is unrivaled with the much larger ships. So these 12 pax vessels, we can go into small sounds, small fjords, away from the bigger ships, complete exclusivity and incredible wildlife sightings. But the other benefit is that if the weather is bad, we can actually sort of dodge it. A lot of the time, you can go in and out of places and really escape the weather and still keep an amazing itinerary. And you often sail through the night. And if you see a polar bear, for example, at 3 a.m., I had this year, I was woken up at 2:15, having gone to bed at 1 a.m. And I then woke the clients up 50 minutes later because a polar bear was approaching the ship. So it can be truly fantastic. But Stockholm itself is a beautiful, characterful ship. It's one of the most beautiful vessels I've ever been on. The crew are out of this world, and it is incredibly comfortable. And the food is out of this world. I mean, it truly is. And in fact, the problem is that you spend a lot of time eating as well as watching wildlife, and you're not doing much exercise, so it can be quite dangerous. And let's just put it this way, the crew are very generous with their wine as well. So yes, it's a fantastic vessel. It does have bunk beds. It's important to state. They do have ladders. You can't, they've taken it out for the photo here, but it gives you real flexibility. And the cabins are actually surprisingly spacious, and the bunks are large and very, very comfortable. But it is worth noting that they are bunks and not sort of twin bed setup or doubles as well. They are ensuite cabins as well, and they all have portholes. I do not suggest you open the portholes because you never know what might come in through them, but it's always exciting. Whilst we're on the ships, there's always wildlife around. So even as you leave Longyearbyen, the first things you'll see are these formers, northern formers. This is actually one of the dark morphs, but you also get the lighter, paler morphs as well. It's an amazing place to see wildlife. And it's not just about polar bears. Of course, it's Polar Bear Week, and we're going to talk about polar bears, but there is so much more on offer in this amazing Arctic realm. The waters around Longyearbyen itself and Isfjorden, the main fjorden to the north, are pretty open even through winter. There'll be some ice around, but they can completely freeze over. But by the time we get there in May, the waters have mainly opened back up again, and sailing is pretty easy out of the fjord. But sometimes you can hit ice belts, and it's always good fun to start the trip with a little bit of ice. And the birds are basically following the boats, the ships, as you stir up the water, and Arctic cod and little crustaceans and things like that, arthropods, get pushed up to the surface and they can dive down and snatch them. You also get followed by glaucus gulls and sometimes, very rarely, skuas and things like that. But kittiwakes as well, black-legged kittiwakes. So there's always stuff around to keep you entertained, even as we set sail. The problem is on the first day, of course, is there are safety briefings and all sorts of other things that we have to sort of get on top of, and obviously eating as well is always an important thing. What I would say is that, as I talked about flexibility, is if we are having a meal and a polar bear is sighted, things do stop somewhat, and usually the polar bear is the priority, or the other wildlife, whatever it might be. I've had many an occasion where I've been sat at the dinner table, and within 30 seconds, every single person is on the deck. So it's always a rewarding. And that's the great thing about a small ship as well. Quick reaction times. There's only 12 of you to get ready to go on the Zodiacs. You can be ready quickly and you can be out to see what it is you're after. I just wanted to show some pictures now of Zodiac cruising and the activities that we can kind of do from the ship. I'll go into this in a little bit more detail again later, but it just gives you an idea of what to expect in this magnificent landscape. So when we go in May and in June as well, there's a lot of snow cover still in Svalbard. There aren't so many wildflowers or breeding birds. There are a few that are coming back, particularly the seabirds are coming back and starting to nest, but there won't be that sort of glut that you get maybe in the summer months. But the landscapes here are some of the most beautiful in the world. And I genuinely mean that. I'm very privileged, obviously, and I get to travel a great deal. And still to this day, Svalbard in May and spring is absolutely spectacular. There's still fast ice attached to shore, big ice fields to the north, and these amazing carving glaciers. So it is just absolutely breathtaking. What I really love is when you find a piece of fast ice like this, there may be some exciting opportunities to make landings. It's important to say at this time of year, landings come second typically to Zodiac cruising and searching for wildlife from the ship. The benefit of these small ships is that their sides, the gunwales, are very low to the water, and you can enjoy excellent, and I genuinely mean excellent sightings from the ship. I'll show you some of those later on, and I'll try and differentiate sightings from the ship and from the Zodiacs as well. But we do make landings, including on fast ice, which is an absolutely thrilling proposition. It's an amazing experience to be able to stand on ice that's still floating on the water. I've never done it anywhere else, but these small ships allow this because of the small number of passengers. And again, I'll explain a little bit more about this later because there are some other great things you can do with fast ice, but we'll get to that in a bit. This is really fun. So as we were sat there, the crew, well, the expedition team who I work with, Christian and Bo, I work with them each year. Christian's a wonderful German expedition leader. Bo, who acts as his assistant, is also an expedition leader. They're incredibly knowledgeable and they will offer you all sorts of incredible bits of knowledge, but they're just the nicest people and so passionate. And I get to work with them each year and we build up a really good relationship and friendship. And we speak even when I'm back home. So it gives you an idea of just how wonderful these people are. But being able to walk up to a ship is pretty amazing for a team photo. And you can actually see that our group, they're all wearing similar suits. They're flotation suits and they give a thermal efficiency. So you do not need to bring big outer waterproof jackets and trousers on these small ship expeditions. It's a legal requirement. You have to wear them every time you're on a Zodiac, but they're also incredibly cozy. So if you want to wear them on deck, then you're welcome to. I personally wear usually my hiking trousers on deck and a down jacket because it gives me a bit more flexibility and I'm usually warm enough. But if you want to use these, you're absolutely entitled to. It's fine. It's yours for the duration of the voyage. And so you're welcome to wear it whenever you like. The problem is if you go inside, it gets very hot. So you will need to take it off probably, but they're fantastic bits of kit. And you can wear them throughout the voyage. This just gives you an idea of the landscapes in this part of the world. So this is actually near the town of Ny-Ålesund, an old mining settlement. It's now a scientific research station. And it's a beautiful, beautiful area at this time of year. It can be home to polar bears, Arctic fox. It's a really good area for Svalbard reindeer, which I don't think I have any pictures of in this presentation, but they are a wonderful thing to see. And it's great fun just finding bits of ice and photographing the ship in these areas. It's always amazing. And the ships, seeing a small ship in these vast landscapes is really, really spectacular. Up in this part of Svalbard, to the northern end, is where we hope to find some ice. Now, there are some new regulations, which we can talk about in a little bit more detail, about watching polar bears. And this is to do with distance regulations. And typically, at this time of year, you have to stay 500 meters away from a polar bear. This puts people off. But actually, if you go up to the sea ice, there is no requirement for you to keep 500 meters. So we can spend a few days in the ice enjoying world-class sightings of bears. It's not entirely limited to you seeing a bear 500 meters, half a kilometer away on ice or on shore, just off the coast, you know. So it's really important to make you aware of that. You can still have some amazing sightings, and I will show you some in a little bit from this year when the regulations came in. I'll also show you some pictures from previous years, but you really can have some amazing sightings. And this is what I love. It's 24 hours daylight at this time of year, but at about probably 9 o'clock at night through to 2, 3 in the morning, you get this beautiful golden light in the evenings. And when it's clear and you park in the sea ice like this, there's not a sound in the world. We turn off the engines and you can just park on the edge of the ice and just enjoy pristine wilderness. You might be able to see on this picture, there's some fox tracks following along the edge of the pancake ice. Pancake ice is very thin, so the fox is skirted around on the thicker ice. But it's an amazing place to be. There's nothing like it, in my opinion. Sitting on the edge of the ice, knowing there's not a ship for 50 miles in any direction is just magical. And the great thing about these small ships as well is we can go to landing areas where the big ships can't. So you just don't get that same level of sort of, I guess, encountering other ships that you might on a larger vessel. You have your own areas you can explore, and you'll see hopefully from the photos in this the opportunities that affords you. And this is sort of just a nice clip again of showing you the edge of the fast ice and just what the landscape is like in winter. So this is fast ice, which means it's attached to shore, and then these beautiful mountains all around. And actually, there's a polar bear way in the distance here, but you can't see it with this camera. This was the bear itself. We saw him from about 2.5 kilometers away through binoculars, a little orange speck. And that's something worth noting as well. When you scan for polar bears, don't look for something white in a white world, because it's not white. It's nearly always cream orange. And at distance, particularly, they can almost seem to be real vivid orange color. And it's because of the hollow hair. You get a little bit of algae that grows in between the hair and bacteria. And basically what happens is they go a slight yellowish tinge. Makes it much easier to spot a bear in yellow. It becomes very challenging when the snow starts to melt and it becomes a slushy color with soil mixed in, and that's a lot more tricky. But at this time of year, you can see the bears from a distance, particularly on white ice. It's very easy to see these sort of cream orange lumps. But this sighting was amazing. We're on Zodiacs. It's important to say that this was before this year's regulations. So these pictures were taken legally, with a very long telephoto lens, I should say. But this now wouldn't be allowed on land. On sea ice, we can still have encounters like this on the Zodiac. So it's important to say that. But we had the most amazing encounter. And again, 2 Zodiacs. We only have 6 people on each Zodiac, plus our expedition leaders, who are obviously at the helm. And it means on each side, there are only 3 people. Again, I have some footage and some photos to show you just how much flexibility this enables photographers particularly, but for people that just want to enjoy beautiful sightings of incredible wildlife. Now you can see this polar bear came pretty close. We did not ever approach this bear. It's really important to say that. We would park up in the distance in the ice and the bear approached us. So it's really important to state that as well. And bear welfare with our guides are an absolute priority. I've never been with such conscientious guides in the fact that their whole concern, number one, is following regulations, obviously, but secondly is animal welfare. They do not want these bears to waste energy following boats. So they just don't allow that to happen. So that's really important to state. But as you can see, when the bears are in an amazing position in ice, particularly, you get these beautiful white environments. For photography, it's exceptional. But I can tell you, when you can hear a polar bear breathing and it's on the ice 20 yards away, there is nothing like it on Earth. It is out of this world. It's an incredible experience. You get to appreciate just how large these animals are. It's probably worth saying, except for the photos of Skavin, all of these pictures I've taken on trips. So it gives you an idea of what's possible. But it's not just about close encounters. For me, one of the magical things about Svalbard, and again, I've got more pictures of this, is getting distance between you and your subject, whether that's a polar bear, a reindeer, and capturing them in this environment and just enjoying these vast landscapes and wildlife in a wilderness. It's so rare in this day and age that we can sit and watch something in its natural world without any human interference. It's a real privilege. And again, something that these small ships allow you to do. A big ship makes a lot of noise in comparison. If you find a bear, by the time you've got, even if you're up in the pack ice, by the time you've got everybody in a zodiac or anything like that, or up on deck, the bear could disappear, particularly if people are noisy. On small ships, it just doesn't happen, and it gives you such an amazing opportunity. It's something that is a real honor and something that I find now when I go on bigger ships really hard to deal with because I'm spoiled, and I am, but it makes all the difference. And here's a video of a bear trying to hunt a seal. The little dot on the right, you'll see it disappear in a second through a breathing hole. It was an inexperienced bear, but we stayed. This is fast ice, so we had to keep distance. But you can see the bear was not at all bothered by our presence, and you could see it lying down before. So the previous shot, just to give you an idea, this is a polar bear waiting, watching a seal hole. Then another seal popped up, and that's when it chased after. And that was taken in front of this glacier, but from a different area. And this is actually the ice cap of Nordøstlandet flowing into the fjord of Valenbergfjorden, which is an amazing fjord, fantastic for belugas. I've seen them pretty much every year. I haven't got beluga pictures in here, but they're literally little white lumps is all you ever see. But they're amazing to see nonetheless. And seeing them in this sort of landscape particularly is fantastic, as is with the bears. It's also a brilliant part of the world for walrus, the Atlantic walrus. Svalbard's population has recovered massively since hunting was banned. And because of that, you see some big males and you actually get to see some big haul outs as well. This is actually one of the largest haul outs, but on this day there weren't that many. It's a fantastic place to see them. You have to keep distance when they're hauled out from the main ship. So it's important to say, and this is actually a bird reserve as well. So now we can't get this close. This was taken before the regulations came in for bird reserves, but it gives you an idea of sightings. And I've got more that will come. This is a particularly old male walrus. You can actually see his tusks have been broken off, probably from fighting, but also feeding because they're constantly feeding on the seabed with these impressive mouths and all their whiskers as well, the vibrissae. Particularly fascinating when you study and you listen to the guides about the complexities of vibrissae and how they have so many nerve endings at the base, and that sends them to the brain, and then they can work out where a mollusk is in the sand just through the water, which is pretty spectacular. So you can go through that, and bearded seals have those as well. But this gives you an idea of sort of the different landscapes, really, the habitats you find walrus in. Sometimes they're hauled out on land. Big old boys like this one, you can see he's got blood on his side. He's been fighting. He actually scratched all his scabs off, so he started to bleed again whilst we're there. But you can see here he's on the sea ice. He's been in a fight, so he's kind of gone out feeding again, and then he's hauled out on some ice. And these are the sightings that are fantastic. And these pictures here, so this one here is a wide angle lens at 40 mil on my camera. And then this is at 500 mil on my camera at the same walrus, the same time, but you know, slightly around. And again, you see this gorgeous golden light in the evening. This was a fabulous ribbon of ice, sea ice that have drifted down. So these ice flows were all over and they'd all clustered together to do with the winds and currents. And we just managed to maneuver our way through this ice and enjoy this fantastic walrus sighting without leaving the main ship. The walrus was still there when we left. In actual fact, he'd fallen asleep by the time we left. So it just shows you how bothered they are. But it gives you an idea of these habitats that these animals live in. And this is what the landscapes are all about for me. This amazing sort of section of floating ice, the sea ice, which then links to fast ice in the background. And this is mainly broken up fast ice, actually, that's drifted out of the fjord. And this is a fantastic place, again, to look for polar bears. You quite often see them leaping from piece of ice to piece of ice, the different flows. And it is amazing to be on a ship and either go through this or along the edge of it. It's just got some ethereal quality to it that is really hard to beat. And again, this is some fast ice in the background. You can see where it's broken up as the tides have pushed it. And then some flat fast ice in the front as well, which is breaking off. And that's mainly actually to do with swell and tide currents. And it weakens the ice and eventually it cracks and it gets pulled out to sea as the tide goes out. So it gives you an idea of just what's on offer. And this is that ice flow actually where we found that walrus. So it is a really beautiful thing to do, is to find some ice and park yourself in it. And again, you know, that evening light, this is my group from this year, just magical and a truly exceptional experience. And I'm showing you pictures from Stockholm. That's important to say, but the wildlife experience can be pretty much the same on Skavien. From what I understand, you'll see incredible sightings. It doesn't really matter, and the landscapes don't change. These are some polar bear pictures from the main ship. And again, ice, you're allowed to approach bears. So these are some bit bears on ice that we could get closer to. Just unbelievable encounters. And again, these are taken from the ship. These are not taken from a Zodiac. So it's unbelievable what you can see in terms of behavior, but also the photographic opportunities if you're a photographer. And what I really love here is I've sort of started with bears a little bit closer, and then I've zoomed out. Now you'll see that each bear is getting a bit smaller until you get to this. And this might not be everybody's cup of tea as a photograph, but I love this shot and this sort of scene. This for me is what the Arctic is all about. This huge predator, the largest land predator on Earth, which is ironic when it's also classed as a marine mammal, in this huge white world. And what this is that it's on sea ice, and then a snowstorm blew through behind it, and it made everything white. And for about 10 seconds, maybe, there was no snow in front of the bear, but snow everywhere else, and it made everything white. I'd never seen anything quite like it, and it was just a breathtaking scene and something I will never forget. I remember I didn't even have my camera with me, and I sprinted downstairs, and I thought I'd missed it. And then there was another clearing in the snow just for a split second, and I managed to capture this picture. So if you're interested in photography, I give a lecture on board, and I will obviously be able to assist you with camera settings, but also editing if you want to. But I try and encourage people to actually look at the bigger picture as well. And I think that's really, really important in this day and age. Too many people get caught up on these full frame portraits and trying to get as close to wildlife. Sometimes it's magical to sit back and watch it in its natural world. Doesn't mean we don't get closer. So we were really privileged to see this polar bear and the female. They're actually doing a mating ritual. We saw the female throw ice at the male. They swam together. They boxed like this and played. And we got to watch them for about 3 hours. And this is actually the sighting I said earlier. I got woken up just after 2 a.m. And then I woke the clients up just after 3 a.m. And most of them didn't go back to bed. They had breakfast and then they snoozed during the day until we had some more sightings. I think on this day we had 3 polar bears. My voyage this year, to give you an idea, we had 15 polar bears. Absolutely incredible sightings. And this one was, I mean, this doesn't happen very often. The guides, Bo and Christian, had never seen this sort of behavior for this amount of time. It really was exceptional. And everybody was blown away. It was just one of those moments you will never forget. And it was so worth an hour of sleep for. Waking up after an hour and being told there's a polar bear outside, you're kind of like, oh, is it worth it? Because I was told it was very distant, but when it turns into this, it's definitely worth it. So we'll always wake you up if you want to be woken up. If you don't want to be, then we will leave you in peace. But I suggest you get up. It's an amazing thing to witness. And again, here's just a video that just shows you the expanse of what wilderness that is around here. This is all up on the north coast. And again, the ship just allows us this flexibility, really. It gives you an opportunity to go to places that the larger ships won't, but just enjoy the surroundings. I don't know if you remember earlier, there was a map of the Nordastland at the island to the east, northeast, and then Spitsbergen, the mainland I talked about. Between those two islands is a strait, and it's called the Hinlopen Strait. And here is one of the largest brunette guillemot colonies in Svalbard, if not the largest. It's called Alkfjord, and it's an amazing place to go, even in early season. So this is in May, and there are still tens of thousands of brunette guillemots that come to nest on these towering cliffs, and they are truly spectacular. This is probably only maybe a third of the cliff height, if not a quarter. And the Zodiac here, you can see just the sort of the size, and you can see all the birds nesting on the cliffs. Here's an example of what they're actually nesting on, these tiny little ledges. This is when we got close, and this is eye level from a Zodiac, to give you an idea. It's a really fantastic place, a place of smells, sounds, sights. It's even interactive because they poo on you from time to time too, which is always exciting. But it's lucky at the end of the day. It brings you more polar bear sightings. But there's still plenty of snow around at this time of year. So the birds, some of their nesting ledges might still have snow on. You can see there's a bit of snow around. But yeah, you never quite know where it's going to be. So the birds sort of move around, but they have their chosen nesting ledges. So they'll have to wait a bit longer before they can start to nest. But where you get seabird colonies, you get Arctic foxes. And these are all again taken in May, just to give you an idea. And these are all taken from zodiacs. So you see the fox on the bottom right here. They're just about to start, well, they've just started to molt, and they normally molt on their scruff and around their face first, and then slowly bits of fur come flying out. We actually had two Arctic foxes together here, and then three in total on this day. And then one of the foxes we followed all the way along the coast until it climbed up on the glacier that's next to Alkfjord to the north. And it just walked across the glacier in this amazing scene, something out of a fairy tale. This tiny fox walking across this huge, huge glacier. It really was quite spectacular. And whilst you do these Zodiac cruises, you can find clumps of ice as well. You never quite know what's going to show up. And it's fabulous getting up close to these big clumps of ice. And so when we get to Alkfjord, we always try and do a Zodiac cruise. It's not always possible to do with ice, so it depends on the ice. The whole trip depends on ice as to where we go. But it's important to say that we can't always get to Alkfjord that early in the year, but we always try to if we can. But Zodiac cruises, this is what it's like. Three people on one side of the Zodiac. If we're photographing something or trying to watch, there's nice, comfy matting on the floor of the Zodiac. We actually try and ask people on that side, wherever the subject is, or in this case, an iceberg, to sit down, to kneel down. And then the people at the back have an uninterrupted view as well. And it is amazing. I mean, when you go on a bigger ship, you can have 10 or 12 people on the same size Zodiac. So it really, really does give you an amazing amount of flexibility. And here you can just see exactly how it works with people photographing in the front, and I'm sat at the back. And this is a wide angle. This is actually my phone to give you an idea. So the flexibility is fantastic, and the photographic opportunities it affords you are exceptional. I wanted to show you some more polar bear sightings, and these are of bears on fast ice and land, but they're distant, and they're using mainly very long telephoto lens. So I have a 500mm, but with a converter. So they are very, very distant bears. But again, it's all about the landscape on the ice, on the land, amazing opportunities. And I never ever get tired of seeing polar bears. And I think there's a lot of concern since the new regulations come in that you won't get quality polar bear sightings. And I would just like to reassure anyone that's worried, you still can. It's breathtaking and out of this world experience. And I love this picture because there's actually three polar bears in it. I'll see if I can annotate it just to show you where there's a bear. So there's obviously the main bear, which is here. There's another polar bear here, and there's actually a third polar bear here. And this was an amazing encounter where we saw one bear to start with, then another bear came, and the first bear went way off in the distance. This is all through binoculars, went running over to it. Turned out the one it went running over to happened to be a full-grown male bear, which is actually the one on the right side of the three. And it charged at the small younger bear. So then the younger bear ran away and it jumped in the ocean at the edge of the ice. And then it jumped back again onto land after doing a long swim across from one piece of ice to another. And then a female bear appeared from the other side. So we had suddenly had three bears walking in all directions. And it was just chaos, but in the best possible way. You kind of don't know where to look. And when I took this picture, I actually didn't realize all three bears were in one frame. It's a bit of a coincidence, but nonetheless, something incredibly special. So, yes, you can still get incredible bear sightings and follow the guidelines as well. Let me get off of annotate so I can then change slides. So, oh, let's close the annotations. Hang on a second. Let's just clear all drawings. There we go. And so, yeah, these are all taken at 500mm regulations with either a 2x converter or 1.4 on my long lens. So it gives you an idea of what you can still capture at distance. And then these sort of scenes are what I live for. I mean, this is unbelievable. So a tiny bear on the ice in that bottom left-hand side, and this huge glacier and those iconic Svalbard peaks behind. It's just something from a fairy tale. It's something from National Geographic or BBC. It's one of those scenes that you'll never forget, and it really is truly, truly special. And these are what the glaciers are like all over the place. This is Smeerenberg Glacier, which is a fabulous spot. There's also another one nearby called Fjorden. There's a glacier there as well, and it's all just out of this world. And where you get these glaciers, you quite often get pieces of ice that freeze on back onto shore, and they're great places for wildlife. In this case, a couple of walrus. So we launched the Zodiacs from the ship, rather impromptu. We weren't expecting to at this point. We're expecting to do it later. And we had these amazing encounters with these walrus. And you might be wondering what it's like photographically. Well, this is how close the clients got, and this is what you can get from these encounters. Just the most amazing photographic opportunities. I can assure you both walrus went straight back to sleep. So these are when we first arrived, and just because they heard the noise, I think they're a little bit curious. And then they start to rest their tusks back on the ice and have a snooze, slowly getting more and more sleepy until they end up like this. So as you can see, it's a very relaxed walrus, not at all bothered by the zodiacs. And the photographic opportunities, well, as you can see, are exceptional. But also just to watch them, it's amazing as well. This guy here lying just off the back of the zodiac, well, to the side of the zodiac, was an absolute monster. Again, you can see how stressed they are by our presence. And again, this beautiful snow-covered landscape. The patterns actually in this are exceptional. And I'll show you some landscape pictures at the end just to try and inspire you to look at the world a little bit differently. But he was an absolute monster of a walrus, incredibly healthy. And this is the benefit of these protections that came in Svalbard protecting the walrus. You get these huge tusks and these giant guys, absolutely vast. You wouldn't want to mess with him, that's for sure, particularly if you're a polar bear. But what an incredible privilege. And in order to get this shot, I've actually kneeled down in the Zodiac, used my telephoto lens, and just above the water level. So out of this world, really, really exceptional. And it's something that I never get tired of is seeing these glacial environments with fast ice and ice flows. It's just the most beautiful part of the world. And it is a real privilege to come to these places and to photograph them. And you can get close to these glaciers from the ship, but we also do Zodiac cruises. And sometimes in certain areas, we can make landings, which I'll show you in a minute. This gives you an idea again of this landscape. In the background, you've got the island of Fuglesang, but it is just absolutely breathtaking. This blue ice, this compressed ice with hardly any air in it, old ice from the glaciers. And again, this is great for photography. Lots of kittiwakes love these waterfronts and skuas as well, it's worth noting, as well as glaucus gulls and black guillemots, which we'll get to in a second. But these kittiwakes love the bits of ice, the icebergs and the ice flows, the growlers and things that all come off of these. And as do the black guillemots, you can get some really nice rafts of black guillemots and see them diving. They'll pop up and they'll come right next to you like these guys. Really fabulous. That particularly the edges of these glacial areas are a really good place for eider. Common eider are common. We see lots of them, but it's always worth keeping an eye out in a flock of common eider because in there might be something particularly special, a king eider. These are pretty becoming, well, from this year, I had really good sightings of the king eider in May. We had a flock of about 14 or 15 within a flock of about 60 to 70 common eiders. So there is scope for these beautiful, beautiful birds. And again, by going earlier in the season, there's still a little bit of golden light in the evening. So particularly if there's light cloud cover, you can get these beautiful backlit images. And you never know if we find a polar bear in ice at the right time. Who knows? If the light's just right, you might even get that in light like this. So far, I haven't, but never say never. So here's a black guillemot in flight with those beautiful white wing flashes, those bright red legs. And this is taken from the bow of the ship as a bird's flying past me. I've just panned with it and just amazing. So still a little bit of movement in the wings for those that are interested in photography. But the broodnix guillemots as well, particularly like the glacial waters, they're feeding. And even little auks. The little auks nest on land. They don't nest on cliffs. They nest sort of in scree slopes. But at this time of year, there's too much snow on the ground. So they're more gathering, ready to start breeding once the snow melts. So you see them flying across the open water like this, sometimes 100 at a time. But they're all heading up to their breeding grounds, ready to start nesting as soon as those snows melt. The weather is very unpredictable, particularly with weather systems coming up off the Atlantic. Sometimes you get mild weather, sometimes you can get some very cold weather as well. And one of the things you really want to see is this. This is a true Arctic speciality, the ivory gull. I actually had a client this year. She joined me on the trip, and it was one thing she desperately wanted to see. And she asked what the sound sort of the call was like, and so we played the call. And then within a minute or two, she shouts that an ivory gull is going past. So It was a very surreal situation. We were actually in the pack ice. It wasn't this one, obviously, but an amazing opportunity to see some bird life as well. Long-tailed skuas, absolutely beautiful birds, really stunning. They are up here. Arctic skuas are more common, and we see those pretty much in every voyage. I think I've seen them every year I've been. But they're always around these glacial areas, and the glaciers change year on year. Obviously, there's a lot of surging, big glacial calving events, so it can be quite a magical place to spend some time and just watch the world go by. This particular glacier, this is Smeerenberg Glacier. We actually made a landing, not this year, but the previous year, and we had the group all landed, but some people decided they wanted to go and have a better view. And so the few stayed at the bottom, and then the rest of us climbed up a little bit up the hill. And then there was this amazing backdrop behind us, just breathtaking. So, what I would say is, we don't do long hikes when we do landings. This is probably the most extravagant thing we'll do. So, a few hundred meters to go and get some sightings, maybe of something like reindeer. It's safe, there's no polar bears around, or finding a viewpoint like this just off the beach for glaciers and just stunning vistas as well. And this is what it's like, by the way, just sort of sailing into one of these glacial fjords when the fast ice in front of it's broken up. It's quite a magical thing to see. Um, the great thing about both ships is the open bridge policy, but also on top of Stockholm, you can climb up on the roof. I'm not sure if you can do that in Skvern, but it's a fantastic place to be able to sort of sit and scan, really. You can watch the world. The higher up you are, obviously, the further you can see. There is actually even a crow's nest on MS Stockholm. So for those intrepid explorers, if you are prepared to get harnessed up, you are welcome to climb the mast and go into the crow's nest. It's a fantastic thing to do. And this is what I love doing, sitting on the bow and passing through the ice. This is a little bit of a time lapse just for a few seconds and just enjoying it. This is very thin ice. All the ships can go through this with no problem at all. But I talked about the fact that sometimes we can enjoy these really, really amazing landings on fast ice. And this year we decided to land an anchor to the fast ice, which is something I'd not done before because they hadn't found the right piece of ice. And they cast off these lines, and once they were sure the ship was safe, secure, they lowered the gangway, and we were able to set foot on the ice. And not only did we set foot on the ice, we had cocktails on the ice after enjoying a fabulous dinner on board. And it was unbelievable just to be in this amazing environment, beautiful scene, everybody smiling with a drink in hand in the most gorgeous light. And we've got a group picture in front of the ship just because you can, why not? Lots of people had selfies and pictures of themselves in front of the ship again. Why not? I was guilty there too, it's worth noting. But it really was exceptional. The only issue was not long after this point, you can see where we've walked on the fresh snow on the ice. They said, okay, I think it's time we get back on board. And then you can see actually on the left side here, the water's flat calm. But about 10-15 minutes later, as we were boarding, a swell started to come around the headland into Isfjorden and around into this fjord. And this swell slowly broke up the ice. And we actually ended up having all of these ice anchors, so they're big stakes hammered into the ice. The ice can be pretty thick, were suddenly left floating in ice. And so they had to use a zodiac to retrieve the wooden stakes, our ice anchors, and then they could pull the lines in properly. It's quite a bizarre scene to see where we were just stood suddenly floating out to sea. So really, really exceptional. The plan was to actually anchor here all night and turn the engines off. Unfortunately, that didn't quite happen, but we did get to turn the engines off a little bit later when we found somewhere to settle. It's worth noting, as well as polar bears and the bird life, there are Svalbard reindeer, as I've already said, and obviously the Arctic foxes. Unfortunately, I don't know why I didn't include any Svalbard reindeer in here, but it's a fantastic part of the world for the pinnipeds, the seals. These ones might be familiar to many of you from the UK and North America, and Northern Europe, I should say. These are harbour seals, or common seals as we call them in the UK. And there's a wonderful little bay where you can see these guys. And one of the great things about having, again, only two zodiacs with so few people on, is you can sneak into the bay if the tide is right. And the seals aren't bothered by your presence. They have a look at you, but they'll stay on their rocks like this, doing their banana impressions, but they won't move. and they're not going to disappear. If you come in with 10 zodiacs into here and have this queue of zodiacs going around, all of these seals will disappear. It's just not possible. So this enables us these amazing sightings and gorgeous photographic opportunities. It's really, really unusual to get harbour seals to be this cooperative, particularly in Svalbard. They're very sort of nervous, particularly with bears around, and you know they just don't stick around. They're first sign of danger and they're out of there. But you can see here some amazing pictures. It's also a fabulous place for bearded seals. Most bearded seals, I'd say, are a little bit nervous, but some are particularly inquisitive. The younger, the better. Or actually, the really old ones as well. They can sort of not be inquisitive, but they're less likely to go because they realize you're not a threat. This was a particularly young bearded seal, actually taken at Alkfjord, where those big bird cliffs were. And this seal decided to come and have a look at us. And we spent about 10 minutes with the seal coming up right in front of us, spy hopping, swimming past us, providing some great photographic opportunities, but just delightful as well. It was a great way to start a Zodiac cruise. This is a big old boy. War torn. He's actually had his nose ripped by polar bears. This is from quite a few years ago. This picture taken up in Valenbergfjorden. And you might be able to see there's some distinct colour variation. This is actually a youngster, so he's just got his normal coat, and also where he's feeding, the seabed isn't stained with iron ore, unlike where this one feeds in Valenbergfjorden. And you often see polar bears. You often see bearded seals, which have these sort of red heads, and that's because they've been feeding on the seabed, looking for mollusks and crustaceans, crabs and things like that, and they have this sort of incredible staining on their head. You can actually see the vibrissae again, the whiskers on this bearded seal, so they feed in a similar way as the walrus. Visibility at the bottom of these fjords can be, though they can be deep for a start, so it can be low light levels. So by having these incredibly sensitive whiskers, these vibrissae, they're able to sense their prey, and eyesight isn't necessary. And here's another bearded seal. It's actually molting, but again, sort of a very, very sizable seal. This one's a female, but yeah, really, really amazing animals to see. Of course, the Arctic specialist that you think of is the walrus. And from youngsters such as this one, curious one, coming to have a look at us. This is actually taken from the main ship, by the way, to ones on ice floes, as I've already seen. This is a sort of a mixed group of females, a male, and some youngsters, to making landings at walrus haulouts, which are just incredible. And the photographic opportunities here, you can lie on the sand. I warn you, do not kneel or lay in walrus excrement. It smells. My trousers had a smell for 3 years. I can tell you that now. So be careful where you lay, and make sure you do not kneel in anything because it is rather smelly. But this is also a great place for purple sandpipers. So keep your eyes peeled when you're at walrus haulouts, for those. But again, you can see these amazing photographic opportunities, but just the sightings themselves are incredible. Here we are, keeping distance, following regulations. Bo and Christian are left with firearms. It's important to say at any landing site, it's essential all guides, all expedition crew have a firearm. The training is obviously appropriate. They're very well qualified, these guys, and they know exactly what they're doing. And I'll never question Christian. If Christian says something, you take it as gospel because he knows his stuff. And the same goes for Bo as well. They're a fabulous, fabulous team. So I really can't recommend them highly enough. I'm just going to end on a few landscapes that I've taken of different lighting and different scenes. So I love these sort of moody days as well. I think people think when it's a dark, overcast day, not only is it not good for photography, but the landscape is not so good. Actually, I disagree. It's an amazingly beautiful, staggeringly stunning part of the world, and it doesn't matter the weather. Some of my favorite days are the days where it's a whiteout because these mountains appear out of clouds, out of snowstorms, and it is just breathtaking. So I can't sort of remind you enough, reiterate, to just enjoy the landscapes. And the great thing is there are deck chairs on the back of the ship, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the views, or go on the bridge and scan and enjoy the views. It's even better. Or the bow. Why not? Just go all over. You can make the most of any opportunity as it presents itself. But you can get these beautiful, simplistic views. This is actually a color photograph. I know it looks black and white. This was from this year of just the peaks in the northwest, which is where Spitsbergen got its name, these jagged peaks, these pointed mountains. And then this is down in the southwest in a place called Hornsund. And it is just the most, well, as you can see, staggeringly beautiful part of the world. And I implore you to visit and join either Helen or myself on one of these small ship experiences. Even if you've done Svalbard before, come and see it in a whole different light because this is out of this world. It's a whole different level, and I can't recommend it enough. So, to give you an idea, we have two different voyages on these small ships. We have our Svalbard photo expedition, which is with myself. They're both 9 days, it's important to say. It departs on the 11th of May, so it's spring, beautiful time, lots of snow. It includes all flights, the hotel in Oslo, transfer in Longyearbyen as well, so into town and then back to the ship. Luggage storage as well, so you can spend some time exploring the town. All the drinks on board MS Stockholm are included. And unfortunately, if you do decide to join the photo expedition, you'll be joining myself on this voyage. But promise you, I will look after you and make it one heck of a trip to remember. And I know Helen will do the same on our Svalbard wildlife expedition, which leaves a little bit later on the 1st of June. It also has a group size of 11 and it includes everything but the drinks. So, yeah, it's an amazing expedition, an amazing opportunity. And now, if you'd like to ask us any questions, be sure to use the question functionality, but you can also use the chat functionality. And then I think Helen is going to launch a poll as well.
I am. Wowzers, Mr. Brett. Thank you very, very much indeed. Crikey, you've made me want to go back, but like, that's not hard. I always want to go everywhere. But no, I echo what you've said there in terms of the wildlife, in terms of the scenery, the remoteness. This year we got within 9.5 degrees of the North Pole, and I was beside myself with excitement. We did a landing onto a piece of ice, and we just stood there, and we just had a couple of minutes of just absolute silence, just taking in, just I never dreamt I would get that close to the North Pole, and it's mind-boggling. It really is. So we have had loads of questions, Brett. So thank you very much. I have essentially answered as many of them as I can, but a few have come up a couple of times over. So
Yeah.
I would like to ask you just to clarify a couple of points, please.
Sure.
First of all, kit.
Yeah.
You mentioned, and you're quite right, on both of our vessels, the Scovane and also the Stockholm, we wear the flotation devices.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you take a down jacket for use on deck, which I also do. But other kit, I just responded that it would be beanie, thermal gloves, thermal socks, and layers, really. You don't need to spend masses and masses and masses. You just need to go to M&S and get yourself some good thermals. I think that's really...
I think thermals are key. I usually wear windproof walking trousers just so that they don't get the cold air with the thermals underneath. And actually, I'm on deck, I'm comfortable. And if I get cold, I go in and have a hot chocolate or a tea or coffee. It doesn't really matter. Be careful on Stockholm, by the way. If you let Freya or one of the stewardesses make you hot chocolate, be warned it might have rum in it. So just be aware. But yeah, clothing wise, definitely that. Even I would say things like socks, it's better to actually wear a thin pair of socks underneath and then maybe a slightly thicker pair because again you're layering, it just keeps your toes warm. And the same for gloves, maybe wear thermal liners and then a pair of nice winter gloves on top. If you're into photography, you can buy special photographic winter gloves. If anybody wants any information on those, I can give them separately. But yeah, layers is key. And for me, on deck particularly, I want to get out quickly. So the survival suits are great if you know you're going to be on deck for a long time, the flotation suits, because they're lovely and warm, but they do take a couple of minutes to get on. Whereas if you can just chuck a jacket on and have your gloves and stuff.
Let me tell you, you should video each other because it is hilarious and you think you're never going to get into it. And the second time is pretty funny as well, but then you get into your stride and it's all good.
It's amazing how quickly people get into them when a polar bear's been seen, though.
Absolutely, yeah.
Suddenly everything speeds up.
Bring a down jacket that you can just wear to go in and out when you're going in off deck and going searching. Layers, you can leave them in the salon, in the lounge. Exactly. And just thermal beanie, hat, gloves, etc. So it's brilliant. Kit, photographically wise, you have I just have a bridge camera that is 0 to 600 mils. But you've mentioned wide angle lenses, you've mentioned 500 mils with converter. If you had
Yeah.
to simplify it to the basic bits of kit, what would you take?
So I mean, for most people, they don't want to take big prime lenses like I have. You know, they're big and heavy and cumbersome. Something like a 100 to 500 mil zoom lens is fantastic because you can actually do even landscapes with that stuff, with that kind of lens. It's a really thing, or a 100 to 400 maybe, or whatever it is that your camera system uses. But then I would take a wide angle, either something like a 24 to 70 mil for those that are photographically minded, or even a wide angle like a 16 to 35 mil. It just gives you that opportunity to capture, particularly when you want ice in the foreground and mountains in the background, you can just zoom out that much more. For me, I think, well, and I'm sure it is for you too, Helen, that the landscapes are actually what it's all about. I mean, don't get me wrong, the wildlife's what it's all about, but it wouldn't be that amazing place if it wasn't for those landscapes. So to overlook them and ignore them photographically is a little bit criminal.
And it changes. The
Oh,
cloud
always.
is constantly changing. You've got the 24-hour sunlight. Now, a silly thing, the first time I went, I knew it was going to be light for 24 hours a day.
Yeah,
What I didn't expect was sunshine for 24 hours a day. I thought it would
yeah.
just be light, but the sun is literally shining at 2 a.m.,
It's gorgeous, yeah.
which is fab. Yeah. Just another couple of questions that we've had, I'm just going to cover off quickly about footwear. So boots are not provided on either of the vessels that have been discussed tonight, but we do have a company in Longyearbyen that we can hire boots from, and we pick up via, when we go from the airport into town, we pick up the boots and then we go to our embarkation point and vice versa at the end. So boots we can arrange, that's not a problem. Andrew is asking about Wales. We were discussing that before the presentation. So if we can just go over early in the season realities.
So realistically in May particularly and into June, but particularly May, realistically you're going to see minke whale and hopefully you'll see beluga as well. It's as with anything, who knows what you might see? Things like to pop up and surprise you. But you're unlikely to see the humpbacks, your fins, your big baleen whales, and that's primarily because they're still migrating north. They haven't quite reached that point in the Atlantic yet, that North Atlantic. So, yeah, it's not a big cetacean time, but I mean, don't get me wrong, I've had amazing minke sightings in May, particularly, and this year I had some fantastic beluga sightings as well, some big pods, 50 plus. So, yeah, you can enjoy some great sightings, but it just depends on, particularly things like belugas, is all dependent on ice and currents and all sorts of stuff. So, they're always by shore, but depending on ice, you might not be able to get close to shore or. So
Yeah.
yeah, you never quite know what you're going to see. We actually saw belugas within 30 minutes of leaving Longyearbyen this year. So
We had them right outside Longyearbyen
yeah,
as
so
well. They were distant, but
yeah,
they were the first thing that we saw, which
yeah,
was, we're just watching the full miles going past, and then suddenly a client goes, belugas, and we're
yeah,
all,
literally the same thing.
yeah,
So,
it's utterly bizarre. Right, now what I'm going to do before I forget is just launch a quick poll, which gives you at home the chance to request more information and a detailed itinerary on either Brett's photographic trip or my non-photographic trip. The opportunities are still there. I'm just not a professional photographer like Brett. So you can essentially just choose which one you would like more information on. While you do that, Brett, I would also just like to ask you can you just reiterate what the new regulations are, please? We've had quite a few
yes,
people just saying, is it affecting the trips? In my opinion, we had fantastic sightings this year and the regulations were new for this year. You clearly did as well.
yeah.
Can you just briefly run over what those regulations are, please?
Yes, so there are regulations around certain bird colonies. I'll start there because it's a little bit confusing. So there's a couple of islands. One's Moffin Island, which is where I had that walrus haul out, and I talked about. I forgot to actually say which island it was. It's Moffin Island, and it has an exclusion zone around it, and it's primarily just so that ships aren't in the way of birds coming back to shore, which makes perfect sense. It just so happens that there's a walrus haul out there, so And I think the distance is 100 meters. We're not allowed to get closer to, I seem to remember, for the bird colonies. But then the main one, obviously, is polar bears. So I think it's up to, well, basically, it's polar bear cub season is their concern. So I think it's until mid-June, if I'm, no, mid-July, sorry, maybe. I think it was mid-July. You're not allowed to get closer than 500 meters to a polar bear within 12 miles of the coast of Spitsbergen. The sea ice is typically much further away than 12 miles from the coast, well, or around that area anyway, but you can always get past it. Um, Particularly the later you go, the easier it is obviously to go further north. And once you're outside of those 12 miles, that's international waters, and those regulations are completely invalid. So what a lot of ships are doing, particularly the small ships where you can have these incredible intimate encounters, particularly from zodiacs and from the ship itself, because you can be parked up next to the ice and pretty much eye level with a bear, is actually is to go to the ice in the ship, and you can, if there's a bear that is, so they say there's two different types of bear. There's a nervous bear, which are ones that they hear a ship usually at 3-4 kilometers away, and you'll see this speck running. And it doesn't matter how hard you try, you're never going to get close to that bear. And then there are bears which they call curious bears. I mean, there are some that are just abject and they're not interested in you in the slightest. But there are curious bears which are always fascinated by things in the landscape, and they'll come and check it out. Even if you weren't there and there was a big iceberg, they'd go and have a look at the iceberg. Or, it doesn't matter that you're a ship. It's something new in its environment. It'll come and look at you. And those bears can come remarkably close. The key thing with these sightings in international waters, and the big reason we use these vessels and the crew as well, the expedition team, is because their primary concern is animal welfare. And for us, that's the most important thing. And if they deem that we are interfering with a bear's behavior or any wildlife behavior, they will immediately leave the sighting. So that's really important to stress. So even if it's perfectly legal, they still won't stay there just because it's legal if they think it's wrong. And that for me is the most important thing. And at numerous times I've been on the bridge and Bo and Christian have been like, nope, not happening. And you're like, okay, fine, completely trust you. I know they have the right reasons for it. And so in that situation, whatever they say is final and we move away. But it doesn't mean you're going to not get great sightings. You can have incredible sightings. And I genuinely mean that. I think everybody on my voyage this year came back raving. Um, and to see 15 bears in, basically 8 days on a boat is, in this day and age is fantastic. Years and years past, people saw more, but that doesn't happen these days. So, and when you find bears, you will find you get what they call these quality bears, which are those sightings that you take thousands of photos of and you remember for the rest of your life. And then there will be distant bears, but it doesn't mean it's not amazing to watch. It's just they're not going to be right up close. So don't worry, there are regulations, but from my experience, they haven't ruined the experience. And outside of that time, just to let you know, so after that time, that date in July, you can get within 300 meters of bears. I don't know why that makes a difference. And this year, I did see a mother polar bear and two cubs, which was amazing. So, yeah, you can enjoy great sightings still without.
And then later in the season you go, you've also got a chance of the Northern Lights, of course.
Yeah,
So
at the end of the season, yeah.
September, you've got more wildflowers, and you've got the bird breeding colonies, as you mentioned, in full go. I mean, it's an assault to the senses when we go early in the season. You hear those birds way before you see them.
Yeah, for sure.
And yes, the smell, the sound, it's NICAM surround stereo sound. It's fantastic.
For sure.
So, well, listen, Bret, that's just marvelous. Thank you so much. You have just really inspired. I think this evening, honestly, your images are sensational. Your passion for the destination is sensational. So, from Svalbard, we move on to South Africa. So guess what? You've got me again on Thursday if you want to sit through being talked at about our new group departures that have gone off with aplomb in South Africa this year, as well as a quick recap on some of the other small group holidays that we can offer there, then join me from 7:30 this Thursday. We have Namibia coming up after that. So keeping within Southern Africa, we have Discover Bear Photography, so more along the lines of what Bret has been discussing, and also India right at the end of the season. So if any of those appeal, sign up on our website. If not, we hope we have inspired you with Svalbard. It is an incredibly special destination. Bret, you're a marvel. Thank you very much. And
Thank
we
you.
will see you hopefully on Thursday. And on that note, I wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thanks for joining us once again.